Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. On today's show, we're going to start off with a report from Adam Schefter that he believes it's quote-unquote possible that Mike Tomlin could choose to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of this season. Then we'll get into Todd Haley's interesting take on Mike Tomlin and whether he's the issue or if something else is the issue. And then we'll finish up today's show with a new 2026 QB option that has emerged in recent days that the Steelers can consider to be their starting quarterback in 2026. But before we get into the content today, guys, predict it for me down there in the comment section to kick off today's show. Who will be the Steelers' starting quarterback next season? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Give me your prediction. And now let's get into the Mike Tomlin rumors here, starting with Adam Schefter going on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and saying that it's quote-unquote possible that Mike Tomlin could choose to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. He was also talking about Ravens head coach John Harbaugh and how both of these head coaches are kind of on the semi-hot seat at this point in the season with one game left to go. Obviously, somebody's going to lose this week's game versus between the Steelers and Ravens, and one fan base is going to be extremely unhappy with their head coach for not making the postseason this year, is what Schefter had to say yesterday. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, for all they've done, for all they've meant to their respective organizations, for all they've meant to the National Football League, they will have a big say. I think these guys will go in there and say, okay, it's been a great run, might be time to try something else. Whether that's TV or another job somewhere else, like those things are possible. They're within the realm of possibility for the wide range of outcomes after Week 18. Now, listen, man, there's been a ton of whispers surrounding Mike Tomlin potentially maybe wanting out of Pittsburgh and how he's tired of being in Pittsburgh, might want a new challenge either somewhere else in the National Football League, or there's even some whispers about potentially going to college, but he's been asked about that a number of times, man, and Tomlin continues to give the same answer, which is that he loves coaching, and he loves coaching here in Pittsburgh, and he loves coaching at this level. And I just don't know if I really take much stock in the whispers around the league. I think people like the idea of Mike Tomlin going to a different organization, seeing what he can do with a different team and, all that different stuff. And I certainly think Steelers fans, a lot of them are hoping Mike Tomlin decides to move on, because I really don't think Art Rooney, the team's owner, is getting ready to fire him. All right, it's yet another non-losing season, and here for Mike Tomlin, and it might be another playoff season for him if they can win this week versus the Baltimore Ravens. But also, he still has a lot of money left on his contract, and I'm not sure if the Steelers are going to want to let him go and pay that much money to bring in somebody else, somebody that doesn't have the same pedigree or the track record that Mike Tomlin does have, because he does have the highest win percentage out of any head coach in Pittsburgh Steelers history. He's got 19 straight non-losing seasons. He does have a Super Bowl championship under his belt, and you can make an argument that despite some pretty lackluster quarterback play, he has, gotten this team to play, to the highest of its potential in terms of the talent that's been on the roster over the last several years. And then, in terms of Tomlin and what he wants to do, I think the only way that he's not the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers next year is if he decides to leave. And with Cam Hayward slated to go into his final season of his career next year, I don't think that the timing really lines up for me to think that Tomlin would want to leave one season before Cam Hayward retires. I would think Mike Tomlin would want to stay in Pittsburgh for at least as long as Cam Hayward is here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is at least one more season. Now, I actually think that after the 2026 season, heading into the 2027 offseason, so turn the calendars, forward a year, maybe there's a possibility. Cam Hayward might be retiring, Aaron Rodgers might be retiring, and then Mike Tomlin might decide, hey, maybe now's the time to get going and go to a different place here. But for right now, I think Mike Tomlin is probably staying put here in Pittsburgh. What say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. What is the percent chance that Mike Tomlin is back in 2026? Put it on a scale of 0 to 100 for me down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here. I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Polymarket. While I tell you about our sponsor today, give me a number between 0 and 100. It's time to challenge the status quo, and Polymarket is now live in order to help us do so. You guys can be a part of a revolutionary alternative to sportsbooks with our special invite code. Download Polymarket's new app now via the special link that is in the description and comments to unlock exclusive early access and a free $10 in your account with the invite code chat. Polymarket is a prediction marketplace, guys, and that lets you make trades on the outcomes of sporting events. As you guys can see on screen here, you can even buy and and sell within the game itself with live trading. Polymarket has the lowest fees ever. You trade against other people, not the platform. You can cash out anytime and react to momentum swings within the game. You are in control. It's legal and available nationwide in all 50 states on their iOS app right now. For this week's Steelers game, the Polymarket is giving the Pittsburgh Steelers a 38% chance to take down the Baltimore Ravens, which makes sense because the Steelers are down DK Metcalf and Darnell Washington and coming off a loss to a then 3-win Browns team. $10 free is waiting for you right now. No card, no deposit, nothing. Download the app today with our exclusive code CHAT at chatsports.com/Polymarket for exclusive early access and $10 free. Now staying on the topic of Mike Tomlin, whether or not he's the issue here in Pittsburgh or whether he should go, former offensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, Todd Haley, had a very interesting take on Tomlin and his whole situation on the Believe in Steelers podcast this week. This is what Haley had to say. He says, I think you go back in history when Terry Bradshaw went away after being a mainstay and Chuck Noll was seen as one of the greatest coaches of all time. All of a sudden, it looked pedestrian. All of a sudden, everybody wants Chuck Noll fired. They didn't draft Dan Marino, unfortunately, and if they had, who knows what that scenario would have looked like. The same thing in New England with Belichick. When you don't have Tom Brady, you look a lot different as a coach than you do when you have him. And I think that's really what's going on with Tomlin right now. Then it's up to the people in charge to measure if the team is responding to the head coach, or is it just a quarterback problem? And to me, you're plugging a hole right now with Aaron Rodgers, and I think it was the best scenario for all parties, Aaron included, but it's not the long-term solution. It's a temporary solution. So the key in the Patriots comparison is Drake May. You were up in the draft in a spot, you took a guy, it looks like he's going to be a big-timer, and you hire a really good coach. So I'll stand by it. I think these players respond and listen and are very coachable under Mike Tomlin. It's almost a quarterback problem to me. So on the one hand here, I completely agree with Todd Haley in the idea that head coaching success and greatness is really tied to great quarterback play because, you look at guys like Andy Reid. Before Patrick Mahomes, he was seen as a guy that couldn't win the big game, that he could never get over the hump. All of a sudden, he gets one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's a multiple-time champion, and now he's considered one of the greatest head coaches of all time. Bill Belichick, of course, won all of his Super Bowls as a head coach with Tom Brady as his starting quarterback. In fact, there's only 2 head coaches in NFL history, guys. Joe Gibbs, who actually won with 3 different starting quarterbacks with the then Washington Commanders, then George Seifert, formerly with the San Francisco 49ers, who had Montana, and then Steve Young. There's only 2 guys in history to win Super Bowls with different starting quarterbacks. So every single great head coach that you can think of outside of those 2 guys only had one starting quarterback win them Super Bowls, okay? And, Mike Tomlin's guy was Big Ben Roethlisberger, who he did inherit, but then, you get into the post-Big Ben era, and not only was Ben not great to finish his career, he would kind of run out of gas at the end of seasons, and then you go out and get Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. Both of those guys completely flame out, complete failures there, and then Mason Rudolph was your best out of those 3 during that, couple-year stretch, but he certainly wasn't good enough to get you any playoff success. Then you bring in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and somehow you get to 10 wins with both of those guys, and then, they go elsewhere, and then they're complete dumpster fires this year, and then you bring in Aaron Rodgers, who was not good last year in New York, bring him in here to Pittsburgh, and, you're going to win at least 9 wins this year, maybe 10 if he can pull together one more win here in Week 18. But the success that Mike Tomlin has had with these quarterbacks, where you're consistently getting them to, playoff contention, 9-8 records at the very bare minimum, but usually 10-7 records and double-digit win records with these quarterbacks, it's pretty impressive in terms of what Mike Tomlin has been able to cobble together without great quarterback play. And a lot of head coaches in this league, in my opinion, guys, they wouldn't hold up an organization the way Mike Tomlin has during this stretch where the Steelers have not had a long-term solution at the quarterback position. But on the other hand here, I can also see the other side of the argument, because it's like, who's bringing in these quarterbacks? It's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is the one that has a lot of say in terms of which quarterbacks they bring in the offseason, which quarterback they took in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. He had a lot of say in who they're bringing in, and it's like miss after after miss after miss. And now Aaron Rodgers has been the best iteration of the veteran quarterback that they've brought in. It's been a lot better than Russ and a lot better than Mitchell Trubisky, in my opinion. But to be fair to Tomlin, the options haven't been great because this team is always sitting at 9-8, 10-7. They're not drafting in the top 15, let alone top 10, let alone top 5. You don't really have access to go up and get like a high-end quarterback at the top of the NFL draft, and then you're stuck with the veterans that are available on the trade market and in free agency, and you have very limited options in terms of which guys you can bring in if you're Mike Tomlin. And, you can make an argument that, they've made the right call the last 2 off seasons. You bring in a Russell Wilson on the vet minimum. That was something that was worth doing. Then you bring in a potential long-term option in Justin Fields. Unfortunately, neither of those guys work out. Then this year, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, an all-time great quarterback, and hey, he's been your best quarterback here in Pittsburgh since Big Ben. And right now, he has us on the doorstep of winning our first division championship since we had Big Ben Roethlisberger, right? So especially if A-Rod can deliver us a victory here in Week 18, I think that signing was definitely worth it this offseason, especially given the options that the Steelers did have at the time. But in retrospect, and when we look back with 2020 hindsight, there were opportunities to go younger and get some talented young quarterbacks, not only in the draft with guys like Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, 2 guys that look like legitimate franchise quarterbacks right now for the Giants and Saints respectively. Both those guys were available when the Steelers were picking with their first-round selection this year. But they also could have potentially thrown a contract at Sam Darnold. Now, obviously, that would have been more expensive, and you might not have made some of the moves that you made in terms of the acquisitions and the trades that you made this offseason, because you wouldn't have had the cap space to make those moves with Darnold as opposed to signing Rodgers for what you did. But Darnold is looking like a bona fide top 10 quarterback in the league this year. He's got the Seahawks absolutely humming. It's just one of those what-if situations where you're looking at Sam Darnold and saying, what would he have looked like in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform? Would this team be in a better spot long term, not only in the short term, but in the long term, if you went with one of those younger options as opposed to a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers at the time? Now, where I'm at with this whole situation, guys, is that, and I've been saying this for years, if Mike Tomlin can find a way to get another great QB on his roster and you give him a good roster as well, I think that this team can compete for championships again. Mike Tomlin has already proven that he can get a team into Super Bowl contention if it has a great quarterback with a great supporting cast as well. He's won a Super Bowl when he's had that kind of roster. But Tomlin, is he really capable of finding that next quarterback? He's had multiple stabs and attempts to try and find that answer at quarterback. And, I think his last, attempt here has probably been his best one with Aaron Rodgers. And I do think Rodgers is the quote-unquote short-term solution. And something that you do have to keep in mind here, guys, is that the Steelers are very much in a short-term mindset because Cam Hayward only has this year and next year before he retires. All right, so they're trying to find the best solution possible to give this team the best short-term chance to win a championship, and they don't want to restart with a younger quarterback right now because that pretty much takes away any chance that Cam Hayward's going to retire a champion unless we trade him away, and the Steelers don't want to do that because they want him to be a one-helmet guy. So they're trying to do right by Cam Hayward and some of these older veterans that have been with this team for a long time to try and win a Super Bowl with this current collection of veterans that are currently on the roster. But then there's the question here where if you go into 2026 here and Aaron Rodgers decides to retire this year, what becomes the plan there? Because Cam Hayward would be going into his final season. You got to try and find the best possible quarterback option for this team, not only for the short term, but hopefully you can get somebody that can also help you in the long term. And, there's certainly an interesting option that is going to be out there this offseason this year, guys, and that is Malik Willis, who was once heavily tied to the Pittsburgh Steelers back during the 2022 draft season. There was, of course, widespread reports that the Steelers loved him and that they were going to take him if he was available. Of course, they end up taking Kenny Pickett instead, and it was yet another example of Mike Tomlin manipulating the media into thinking he loved a quarterback prospect. He did it this year with Shedeur Sanders. He did it back in 2022 with Malik Willis, but now he's going to be a free agent, and he's had a pretty impressive 2-year stretch with the Green Bay Packers backing up Jordan Love. He's only 26 years old, and he was somebody that coming out was very raw out of Liberty, and, he wasn't a very good mental processor. Decision-making wasn't great. The throwing mechanics honestly weren't phenomenal either, but he had incredible arm talent, playmaking instincts, and then also a dynamic rushing ability. And now that he's had a couple years to sit behind Jordan Love and kind of develop in that Green Bay Packers system, he has looked really good in his 3 games that he has started and in the 9 games that he has played for the Green Bay Packers over the last 2 seasons. He has a 78% completion percentage, so the accuracy is there, and I think he has improved his throwing mechanics quite a bit. And he's got a cannon of an arm, by the way. He averages over a first down per pass attempt in the time that he's played for the Packers. And then he also has 9 total touchdowns, 6 passing, 3 rushing, with 0 interceptions over the last 2 years. So Malik Willis has played really well. And then just last week versus the Baltimore Ravens, and a big opportunity to showcase what he could do. He had an over 85% completion percentage, over 340 yards passing, and then 3 touchdowns with no picks. I mean, this guy was absolutely dealing. He was showing off that playmaking ability outside the pocket, the dynamic rushing ability. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. I mean, this guy has really developed in terms of the in-structure playmaking aspect of things. That was the big bugaboo with him coming out of Liberty. And, this is the type of guy that could be, similar type of profile to Justin Fields. He's not quite as big as Justin is, but in terms of that dynamic playmaker that can make plays in the pocket, outside of the pocket, and with his legs, that is the trifecta when it comes to, quarterback skill set, and Malik Willis has all of it, or at least he's shown that in the small sample size that he's had with the Green Bay Packers. But despite that small sample, guys, it's been impressive, and it's not a particularly great quarterback market this offseason. So the Steelers, once again, are going to have limited options in terms of which guys they could bring in free agency, right? Unless you want to trade for Kyler Murray and trade a valuable draft pick to go get somebody that maybe is a borderline top 20 starter in the league and isn't a particularly great fit for Arthur Smith's offense, in my opinion. You could think about Daniel Jones, but he's coming off an Achilles tear, and, I don't know how well he'd play outside of Shane Steichen's offense. Mac Jones, I think he's had a good season in San Francisco, but how does he look outside of a Kyle Shanahan offense? Plus, he doesn't have a very strong arm, and he'd be playing in the AFC North. I don't love that combination. Geno Smith has been terrible this year for the Las Vegas Raiders, and I don't want Joe Flacco either. And then you look at the draft class this year, and it's like Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza are going to be taken extremely early, probably outside of the range for the Steelers. And, are you bringing in Ty Simpson? Are you bringing in John Mateer? The options, if Rodgers retires, are not very good for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. And I think Willis might be one of the better options. He's still young. He's got that, even star potential. He really does still have that potential. And it is a little bit of a risk because he hasn't played that much as a starter in the National Football League. But in the time where he has played for the Green Bay Packers, you can make an argument he's looked better than Jordan Love. There's some Packers fans right now talking about keeping Malik Willis and trading Jordan Love. That's how well Malik Willis has been playing for that team. And because of that, he's going to be a hot commodity, man. Somebody's going to give him a big contract. Somebody's going to give him a bona fide starting job in this league next year because this quarterback market is so week heading into 2026. And if Rodgers retires, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm trying to make a case for Malik Willis to come be a Pittsburgh Steeler for the future here. So make the call for me down there in the comments section. Would you take a chance on Malik Willis if you were the Pittsburgh Steelers? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. Keep in mind, he's probably going to be worth upwards of $25 million per season if you bring him in my opinion, just because there's going to be multiple teams looking to sign him. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Yes or no. And that'll be it for our first video here on Steelers Talk today. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button, and make sure you guys type those real ones down there in the comment section if you made it to the end of today's video. Later today, Ponzi and I are going to be going live. Actually, I think we're going to be going live at 6 p.m. Eastern time today. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.